So let's, report on this full self-driving. It's rolled out in China. We had, even just yesterday, I was showing that cars in China were already downloading the app, the program, but it's not full self-driving. It's autopilot. We have the first videos. We also have the first reports of what it can and can't do. And curious to see what you think Tesla did there. So we've got this first video here, FSD in China. Let's watch this one here.
哇，非常可以看得到这个。
I'm gonna turn it off, but basically they're excited. You can see that. Yeah, these are cars driving around in China. It's Did you watch these videos?
I've seen. I think I saw one of them, but maybe not the other one.
Yeah. So this is just in traffic. That's one thing that they're saying, though. It's able to, all the bikers everywhere. You can see that, and it's just driving on nicely. Here's the second one. This is a second video here. Yeah, this normal driving seems to be doing very, very well. Oh my God. Just all of a sudden, you'll see these bikers, motorcycles driving all over the place. It seems to look at the navigation there. Looks like it's to be able to track the streets and so forth. It's impressive though, right? That Tesla can actually just plop it and then there it goes. So just to clarify here, this is 2024.45.3.32.2, which is FSD 13.2.6 in hardware for cars. They're not officially calling it FSD. They're calling it autopilot, navigate on autopilot. What's your understanding what they're doing here, Hans?
Well, there are a number of different possibilities with what we're seeing. One of them is that they literally are just letting the existing version of 13.2.6 that's been trained on, primarily data from outside of China to operate. And they haven't done any sort of modifications to it. We have seen that systems like that drive just fine in Europe. And so, it's conceivable that something like that could operate in China, but I would say that that's probably low likelihood because even the one in Europe that we've seen kind of work, they didn't necessarily roll that out to customers. It's a whole different level of validation that you would think that they would want to go through before they give it to customers. So then we get into the scenarios that Elon talked about on the Q4 call here recently, where he said that, they're trying to just get publicly available videos of the driving environment in China, and they're trying to use that in order to beef up their training. One of the things that he didn't mention that is also highly feasible that I would be surprised if Tesla's not doing, but this is complete speculation on my part, is just actually beefing up the amount of training data that they're using for a China-specific version of this that is sourced from Asia Pacific, but not necessarily China exactly. So they could pull data from Taiwan. Obviously, they've got lots of data from South Korea. They probably have some data from India, even though, we're not officially doing a whole ton of exporting into India. There's should be some vehicles there that they should be able to pull some data from. But then also, anything in Singapore, I don't know what the presence of Tesla vehicles in Vietnam might look like, but there are lots of other Asian countries where we should be able to export data from that are going to have maybe not identical driving scenarios to China, but at least very similar. And that should, any of those driving environments, you are much more likely to encounter the type of traffic there that you saw. Anyone who's been to Asia, especially in the more rural areas, you see all of the motorcycles, bicycles, sometimes donkeys pulling wagons and, just all kinds of crazy traffic that you would not necessarily see in a lot of the rest of the world. And they can actually source that data from other places, use that to create a training set, but also potentially a simulated world model that is based on, ground truth, real world examples, and then train their system on those. And so if, that would be my guess as to what Tesla is doing to try and get this model to actually work and to function very well. And then the question will just be how amenable the Chinese government is to allow Tesla to operate this service in country at scale.
I guess the question people are asking then is, if that's the case, first of all, great insight there. I had not even thought of that. using other data points. But if that's the case, could other Chinese automakers just roll out their own version then if you didn't need all that data?
Well, so there's a difference between training data and fine-tuning data. And so, Tesla already has a driver that's really good at driving. So think of it like if you were to get, to fly to China, you could get in a car and you could drive. It's going to be hard. You're going to have to figure some things out. You're going to make some mistakes. You're going to do some stupid things. Maybe you're going to drive on the wrong side of the road a little bit, or, not understand all the signs. But you actually know how to drive. And so the gap between you, when you first get there, being able to drive and then being able to drive relatively close to what a local driver would drive like is not that large. It's certainly not as large as learning to drive from scratch. And so that's kind of what we have here with 13.2.6 is we've already got a driver who's a really good driver. They just need to learn some specifics and some, like the actual dynamics of that scenario. And so you can do that through fine tuning, where you take a model that's already good and then you just tweak some specific behaviors. And you don't need nearly as much training compute to do that. You don't need nearly as much data to do that, either one of those things. And so while the US may be limiting Tesla's ability to train in China, they actually may be able to fine tune in China because that is kind of a different process. And certainly they have enough of the resources to do that probably in China. And then, like I said, as far as Chinese automakers being able to try to copy Tesla, this is something that I think is going to be entirely, so they have to do the whole training from scratch thing. They need a good driver to start with. So that's a bigger hurdle to cross over. But one of the advantages that I think Chinese companies will have if they are provided the data that China overall has a lot of video data that they can use for training. They'd have to get a little bit more creative with it, even if the cameras aren't necessarily on the cars, which is helpful. Like you need data from cameras mounted on cars as part of the training process to develop this good driver to begin with. But they can supplement that data because Chinese cities are just littered with monitoring cameras. And so they have insane amounts of traffic data
another good point.
That can be extracted from video monitoring data that China has available to it in just, insane amounts. And we just know that the way that the business and government relationships work in China, that if the Chinese Communist Party would like one of these companies to be very successful at developing a driving model, they'll be more than happy to provide that company with whatever training data that they already have from other areas of the government or other businesses into something like a Baidu self-driving effort. So they're going to be, I think, in a pretty good place relative to any other player besides Tesla when it comes to video driving data. Then the challenge will be, do they have the compute infrastructure needed? And once again, I think that that's just like, it's inevitable that they will have that. The question is just when and what the lag time is between them and Tesla when they are given those resources.
Great points. I love this so much. You've educated me quite a bit. Thank you. So let's continue on. Looks like that Tesla China is actually promoting this. This is appearing on their website and the app, basically saying, hey, Autopilot's here. Go download it. Now, this is a blogger who posted their first experience of what they expected with this FSD. Thank you, Ray, for Tesla. China bloggers view of FSD. So let's read it. Tesla FSD unexpectedly went live today, and it behaves better than I anticipated. Its core capabilities are impressive, with no strict operational design domain limitations. Some owners have successfully used it in underground parking lots, set random destination without issues, and executed U-turns flawlessly. Features we've been testing and gradually rolling out. What's remarkable is that this has been achieved without a large-scale test fleet, without an extensive local development team, and possibly even without concentrated local data training. You've explained that very well, Hans. The failures some media outlets predicted, being unusable or causing frequent accidents, simply haven't happened. Of course, it's still early. The driving feels remarkably human-like, and its overall planning capabilities are on par with the best in the field. This suggests that with vast amounts of training data, even data sourced from the US, and relying solely on a vision-based approach, Tesla's system has developed exceptional transferability. That's truly astonishing. That's the point you made, and it's great. That's the logic, right? Like you said, drop me anywhere, and I'm sure I can drive in any country. In contrast, most of our domestic end-to-end teams tend to overfit results to specific cities. A nationwide rollout of end-to-end systems is still some distance away, and let alone achieving cross-regional adaptation. This is the issue with the LiDAR. You need to overfit it. Of course, occasional issues like running red lights, going straight from left turn lanes, or drifting through wrong lanes still occur. That's the issue. They need to learn that, Tesla. I've mentioned before that some abilities are foundational, while others depend on learning specific rules. Even without fully mastering these specific rules, Tesla's FSD fundamental capabilities have already proven themselves. It can be deployed across different regions with virtually no additional software development costs. Whether it can truly master those specific rules now depends if Elon is willing to invest and how he chooses to do so. Exactly what you said, Hans.
Yep. I don't know what he means there at the end by whether Elon, or whether maybe it's a she, whoever it is, what they mean by Elon's willingness to invest. Elon is more than willing to invest. The question is, what compute resources need to be where, what data needs to be sourced from where, how can the data be used to train? Like, now that it's operating, one of the advantages that Tesla will have is they have intervention data once they have FSD going in China, and so they can see, okay, where is our 13.2.6 model actually failing? Where are Chinese customers having to intervene? And then if they're allowed to, they can definitely and easily use that data to rapidly improve the performance of the system. But then you get right back into the question of whether the CCP will allow them to export intervention data. Like, are they only concerned about pure video data? Because if it's only the video data, there also might be ways that they can abstract getting the important information that they need for training from the video data itself, and maybe they can export that and then do some sort of reassembling process in a data center somewhere else. So, there are definitely options that Elon and Tesla have here. And obviously, like, Tesla makes the impossible merely late. This challenge of getting FSD to work from a technical standpoint in China, I think, is something that falls well within the category of something that Tesla can make, something that people will say is impossible that Tesla can make possible. My just big question marks in all of this, like I said, really come back to whether or not the Chinese Communist Party is going to really be okay with this system operating at scale inside China. And I think the answer to that question is probably going to be yes in the short term, but I don't know that it's going to be yes in the long term. One of the trends that we've seen with automakers is that China invited all of these Western companies into China to manufacture cars, do their joint ventures, so that they could learn. But now they are actively subsidizing, they have extracted all of the IP from all of those companies on how to manufacture cars well. They have distributed that IP throughout the Chinese economy, and now they are actively subsidizing competitors against companies like GM or Mercedes or Volkswagen to kick these companies right back out. So they're trying to extract value from these companies, and ultimately they don't want to allow these foreign influences to be successful in the domestic Chinese market. And I could see a very similar dynamic playing out with FSD, where maybe they're not necessarily able to extract the information from FSD directly, but they can use Tesla's operation of an FSD platform inside of China for a period of time to put competitive pressure on their local players, and to also kind of show the way on how it's done, then develop that IP internally, but ultimately to actually not want Tesla to be able to have China as a source of revenue. But that's such a long-term concern. Like, if we can extract revenue for the time being, it's still going to have huge upside for the stock. And then we can get to those other anti-competitive dynamics when we get to them.
Again, it's like Elon said, right? Go ahead and copy us, but we're going to innovate. We're going to have robo, cleaning. We're going to have wireless charging. We're going to have this thing all more superchargers than anyone else. And then we'll let your EVs be able to take advantage of these infrastructure. There's a lot. So first of all, great first step, right? Because this is pretty scary. At one point, I was going, could Tesla, China, basically, yes. And they were like delaying it. They did not. Mm-hmm. They let them in. Stepping stone. So first in, now they're selling FSD to customers, number one. So FSD, paying them $8,800 US dollars. And then two, this shows that they're probably at this point, why would you let this happen if you're not going to let them do robotaxi? So yeah, we'll see. But great news.
It's very positive sign. Yeah. Especially for the next 5 years. We don't know what happens after that, but right now, all of the signs are looking very good.
And it happened so quickly. That's the other thing. Once they said yes, obviously they had to have said yes. They rolled it out. So here is the list Ashok Goswami's sent out in September of last year, and they hit everything here except for FSC in Europe now. FSC in China has been approved. It's funny, some people are going, oh, I didn't hear the government approve it. Do you think Tesla's doing something
if they're
that's
operating,
illegal?
It's approved. Yeah,
it's approved.